Coming up, people who didn't give up and now live to share their comeback stories.
The Whitney Reynolds Show was made possible by O'Connor Law Firm. When it comes to your injuries, we take it personally. Sciton, because results matter. Children's Learning Place, excellence in early childhood education since 1998. Theraderm Clinical Skincare, committed to developing skincare products designed to restore skin health and promote natural beauty. And by SD Innovations, Hollis CPAs and Associates, Four-Sided, UFC Gym Lakeview, Fresh Dental, Kevin Kelly with Jameson Sotheby's International Realty, The Cryo Bar, Barkbusters, and CI Med Spa, and by other sponsors.
A comeback story is a pretty special thing because it only gets told with this title if you don't give up when you're challenged. Today, we are going to introduce you to some tenacious stories. You're watching The Whitney Reynolds Show. A real-life comeback. A literal return to a place they once called home. However, this reunion was extremely different than most because these 16 Jewish women were returning to a country that previously wanted them dead.
The very first time I read through it, I couldn't put it down. I was struck by how quickly the women could go from an extremely traumatic experience to a purely joyful one in the space of one page. One of the most difficult pieces that I read through, and it was just so short, but it really punched me in the gut, if you will. It took my breath away. When one of the women in the story talked about moving to another home and being greeted by a hearse taking a body away and finding out that that was the father of the family they were moving in with who had just committed suicide. Wow. And that just really was so gut-wrenching. And then a few paragraphs later, it turns out they became very close while they were living together, and the two girls and the two families became like sisters, and that was very heartwarming in the space of one page.
We chatted with the translator of the English version of Going Back. These stories were born out of a time that was marked by death. Each of these accounts is a real woman's story of her comeback.
To return in old age to the land where I was born. I never would have thought I would, after everything that happened during the war. I was able to come back here and work as a doctor, and that was naturally a big step in my life, a triumph.
And that was Alice's story. What I found remarkable with reading through her pages was that she wasn't bitter. And for me, that would be something very hard to overcome, the pain of what was to now here I am, and I'm not bitter.
Well, her experience was very different from other Jews in the Nazi Germany era, because she was in Romania for most of her time. And so she had more of an Iron Curtain experience before she was able to emigrate to Israel and spend time there. And that's where she spent a lot of time as a doctor there before moving back to Germany.
Most of these women went back with a heavy heart. Some went because of their families, and others a different story. This line from Steffi caught my attention. She says, "They name streets after the victims today. They lay memorial plaques. They remember. People know what sort of crimes were committed, Why shouldn't I live here? There is no reason. I can say anything. I don't have to be afraid that someone will report me and that I will go to jail.
What I really found amazing about this book was that it put into perspective for me how people survive during disastrous times in human history. I took away from this book that these individual stories were very important, but when they were put together in this anthology, it really became a survival guide for how to live life every day when your government turns against you. And that's essentially what happened to them, is their government turned against them. And I feel like this isn't just a story about Jewish refugees. This is a story about what happens when everyone is forced to make a decision about uprooting themselves and their families and moving to a foreign country where they don't speak the language, where they don't know the lay of the land, and they might not be able to rely on their training in their home world in the new country that they move to. Many of the fathers or mothers in these stories couldn't resume the careers they had started in Germany because that wasn't available to them. That opportunity wasn't available to them. So it was just interesting to note that among all the chaos and tragedy, every day was a new day. And each day brought with it its own set of experiences. And some of them were difficult to overcome, but people could still find some way to experience joy, even when life was very difficult. And I found that very inspiring, especially given what we're going through today. I find myself thinking, how did these women do it? Because how they did it is how I'm going to do it, and how everybody I know is going to do it as well.
Each of these women have suppressed a lot of what they experienced and suffered until now. Their brave voices are awakening the past, and their true comeback is shared between them and for the lost generation. May we never forget.
Now that was a powerful story and gives me so much hope. The comeback to some can seem like an extremely long road. However, as our next guest puts it, it's a daily decision.
Welcome to the show. I wish our viewers could have seen you walk in, because honestly, when you did, you were a breath of fresh air through your smile and just through everything that you are living with and still choosing to smile. So tell us about your 5 conditions.
Yeah, so I have 5 chronic illnesses, and the 3 most significant to me are bipolar disorder. I have bipolar 2, and I've had that my whole life, and endometriosis, because it's a chronic pain disease, and myasthenia gravis, and it's the illness for which I carry a cane, and I got it at 24.
24. So the bipolar, I want to start there. And that is something that's really hard to navigate, because when I was young, we didn't really have titles for it. We didn't talk about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I didn't even know what bipolar was. When I was growing up, I didn't even hear those words. And so I think it's important to have this vocabulary to discuss mental health and to talk about it so that it's normalized, because it's hard for people, especially young people, to ask for help when you don't know what you need help with.
Was it when your friend died by suicide that you realized, oh, I struggle?
Yeah, so I'd struggled with recurring bouts of depression throughout my teen years, and I just had really brief, sporadic episodes in my childhood where I was really happy, and then for no reason at all, I'd feel really sad. And then I tried to ask for help my senior year of high school, and again, I didn't know anything really about mental health, so I didn't have a vocabulary. And I was told, by the adults in my life, this is just teenage angst. It will go away. And I didn't have any control over when it would go away, though. That was the problem. And then when I was a freshman in college, a friend of mine with bipolar disorder died by suicide. So I knew she had this diagnosis, but I didn't really know what it was. And so I started researching the illness, reading books in the library, and I was like, holy cow, maybe this is the reason that she was one of the very few people in my life who understood what I was talking about. And like seeing the symptoms of like inexplicable crying spells, feeling depressed for no reason at all, and then somewhere along the way feeling happy for no reason at all.
Right.
And, you know, I'd have bursts of artistic creativity when I was hypomanic.
Wow. So
yeah.
you discover this, and then I'm going to fast forward to your TED Talk.
Yeah.
Because you actually spoke to this and talked about how to live and work and get stuff done with depression.
Yeah, so I'd worked in mental health nonprofit, and I'd seen help for my bipolar disorder, and I always felt like they weren't really telling you how to get stuff done, so that if you had a goal, you could keep pursuing it with mental illness, especially depression. And so the depression part of bipolar is what makes it hard to be productive. And so the name of my TEDx talk is called How to Get Stuff Done When You Are Depressed.
Wow. And that is really showing up daily for yourself.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Well, so I have coping mechanisms. And so at the end of the day, I look at my mood tracker app, and it's called Dailyo. And you mark your mood by 5 faces. Like the middle is meh, and then the bottom is awful, frowny face, and the top is like happy. And whatever mood I log, you know, if it's a good day, that was great. If it was an awful day, I tell myself tomorrow is going to be a better day. And I pick at least 5 things I'm going to do tomorrow to make it a better day.
You are literally giving yourself a daily comeback. You know that? Yeah. That is amazing. And that's the whole topic of today's show. So tell our viewers what they can do if they do have a bad day, because that's one of the things you say, I pick these things I'm going to do tomorrow. Well, what are some of those? Yeah,
so I think like everybody's different. So that's why you have to know yourself and track your moods. So for me, exercise is huge. Mm-hmm. Lately, I've been into barre. I think everybody, like exercise releases those endorphins, and faith is big to me. So I listen to a lot of gospel music, especially when I'm down. Showering is important. I know it can be really hard if you struggle with depression, those things. So showering, light therapy. I stare at a box of light. And this is really critical if you struggle more with depression in the winter. So this is something that was prescribed to me, and it's been life-changing, light therapy and watching Days of Our Lives. So I love like saving up a good episode. Yeah.
Well, you are absolutely amazing. And I love that you give yourself the grace to go forward the next day, because I feel like we live in a world that is so fast that we forget to check in with ourselves. And that's sometimes why we need to come back to begin with. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
The full circle comeback. Now that is Rasheied Davis, or as some might remember, number 81 for the Chicago Bears. You could look at his life and see his comeback from growing up struggling to retiring an NFL star. However, as we got to know Rasheied and started peeling back his story, we saw a kid who grew up in the rough part of LA, whose dad was murdered. He struggled in school, and then he had a moment where he realized his full circle comeback. We'll let him explain. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, just hearing your story and knowing how far you've come in your lifetime, I want you to take us back to LA. Tell us about your childhood.
Yeah, Boys in the Hood is probably one of the truest depictions of the LA that I grew up in. It's pretty gang-ridden, drug-ridden, infested sort of with a lot of negativity.
And you were able to stay out of so-called trouble, the gangs and the drugs, most of your childhood.
Yes, I was just different. Something was different about me. I couldn't tell you what it was, except for the fact that I probably was scarier than they were, more intimidated by the violence and the gangs and the drugs and all of that stuff.
You lost your dad when you were 8. How did you get through that time?
One of the things that I've started to realize is sort of as a revelation in my life is that I wasn't a good student. in class. But I've always been pretty smart and could retain information when I was a kid. And I started to realize that I think I used the majority of my intelligence as a kid surviving the environment that I was growing up in and trying to figure out how to navigate all of the things that, all of the adversity that I was encountering.
One of the things that I found amazing about your childhood is not only did you, keep going with the different hurdles that came up, but then you ended up going as a walk-on to a JV school, having not really played football. How did that work out?
I was pretty small as a kid. I'm not very big now. I'm about 5'10", 100 and I'll say 90 pounds. At least that's what I finished at. But I was pretty small, and then I decided, well, my cousin came to my house when I was 18 and said, we're going to go play football. And at West Los Angeles Junior College, and I've been playing ever since. One of the things that about me was that once I start something, I give it everything that I have, and I just progressed from there.
Yeah, because within 2 years there, you went on to
San Jose State University, where I played my 2 years there, and then went to arena football beyond that. So within 5 years of me beginning to play football in junior college, I was a professional athlete.
That is wild.
Yeah.
So you end up at the Chicago Bears.
Yes.
Which is awesome. What I know everyone watching, 81.
Yes.
Your career there, you had so many different highlights. You ended up staying in Chicago. But what I love about your story is you had this aha moment in the locker room.
I had a lot of aha moments in the locker room, but I was one of the things that I learned when I was a Chicago Bear was the importance of giving back to the community, right? And so the Bears are pretty active in the community here in Chicago. And one of the things that I picked up along the way was the fact that there was a huge gap in literacy here in the education of kids that were growing up like me, in rough, adverse situations and adverse environments. So that's when my wife and I decided we wanted to do something about it, to give back. And so I have a belief in self-society, right? So I believe that we all have a responsibility to ourselves first and to society second. So it was my responsibility to take care of my life and figure out what I needed to do to be successful and to feed my family and to help grow a family. And then I had to also, once I did that, I believe that it's my turn to sort of give back that wisdom, give back that knowledge, if monetarily, whatever it is that I can do to try to bring kids along with me.
And you have the literacy program for 3rd and 4th graders?
Yes.
Was that specifically when you were struggling in school?
No, but that was when I had a very influential teacher. Her name was Mrs. Dyer. Now, this came up during the development of Saturday Place, which is the enrichment program that you're speaking about. During the development of it, sitting down with the consultants that helped us develop Saturday Place, I realized that my 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Dyer, was someone who was hard on me, but she was also very fair.
And that's what you're doing with the kids that you're helping now, is you are helping these kids get back on to grade level.
Yes.
And you saw this gap. You saw yourself in these kids. And that's what I think is so incredible with what you've done with your life, is you've identified who you were, and now you're going back to that same place to help raise these other people. And, I said this in your intro, people could look at you and say, Bears player, this is great. That's awesome. But really, this legacy you're leaving is truly, truly amazing. So I champion you for that.
I appreciate that. I'm trying to leave an example for my children to understand that we all are products of our environment, but we don't have to live in the negative circumstances. We can all rise above and live above those things. But also we also have to realize that we are all standing on the shoulders of people that have come before us. And so I want them to start at a higher level than I started and take it beyond that and understand that we have a responsibility in a civil society, if we're going to call ourselves a civil society, to not just think about ourselves. Right. We have to think about others as well and try to make things as equitable as possible.
That is so good. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
So fun having him here because I cheered for him in the stands, and now we're cheering for him in real life. Okay, now it's time to take it to the viewers. Words of wisdom. We want to know what you have overcome.
When asked to speak about someone I know that has overcome something, I would think of my Nana, Ann Waller. First, she lost her first husband when I was 12, my grandfather, Virgil Waller. Then, she lost her second husband, Don Neal, in April with COVID-19, and she handled it with grace and dignity and continued to hold our family together during that tough time and continues to hold our family together.
A great comeback story for me is I actually own a seasoning and spice business, and we were at our ends wit, and we thought that it was going to be the end of our business because we were not bringing in the money that we needed to sustain it. And we got connected with an influencer, Tabitha Brown. Thank you, Tabitha. And she began to use our spices and promote them on her personal site because she enjoyed what she was using from us. And that catapulted our business to heights that we never thought that we would be at. And so we're here today, super excited in Oak Brook right now at an event because our business is still here and it's thriving. And it's an amazing thing. And so we've just realized that it takes a community, and you never know where that support's gonna come from, that's gonna catapult you to the next level.
As a marketer, professional marketer for 15 years, I found myself to lose my job quite often, including 5 different times that I've been laid off. And once was 2 weeks after my honeymoon, right after I got married in 2017, I lost my job. We were in the middle of buying a house. Our financing almost fell through because they called my employer to see if I was indeed working there, to check my verification of my employment. And they were like, no, he's no longer here. And that was literally the day after I got laid off. But at the end of the day, I was able to secure the financing, get our house, and eventually get an even better job a few months later. So, as I say, God and life always provide. So I've always been able to come back from my bad career experiences of being in marketing and being laid off quite a bit.
Okay, now it's time to unleash one of the cutest comebacks I've ever seen. Let's take a look.
The comeback from a disability, tragic accidents, and even war. We're chatting with the comeback companions, who happen to be canines.
So our dogs do over 40 commands to help people. So we serve people with over 65 different disabilities. So they are coming to look for things. It could be they may be a veteran that has PTSD. They may be a child or an adult with a disability that they need help picking up dropped items. They need help turning on and off light switches. So these dogs are really there to be a help and an assistance. So they are working with people that are hard of hearing or deaf and alerting them to sounds. So really a wide variety of disabilities, but anything that we can utilize those commands for with the dogs, those are the people that we're going to serve.
I've personally had the honor of meeting a few of these pups. And just when I thought their cute wagging tails had won me over, I saw them spring into action and help their companions accomplish their comeback. And that was amazing.
Think about it. A lot of people have lived with a disability for their whole life, for a lot of their life, and they're used to doing things certain ways, and now they have a dog to help. So we're working with them to teach them how do you utilize these tasks and how do you utilize the dog based on what you need that dog to do, and really set up that personalized plan for them.
And something I took away from this interview, if animals can be trained to help one another, can't we all be a part of someone's comeback?
Remember, your story matters, and so does your comeback. We're rooting for you.
The Whitney Reynolds Show was made possible by O'Connor Law Firm. When it comes to your injuries, we take it personally. Sciton, because results matter. Children's Learning Place, excellence in early childhood education since 1998. Theraderm Clinical Skincare, committed to developing skincare products designed to restore skin health and promote natural beauty. And by SD Innovations, Hollis CPAs and Associates, Four-Sided, UFC Gym Lakeview, Fresh Dental, Kevin Kelly with Jameson Sotheby's International Realty, The Cryo Bar, Barkbusters, and CI Med Spa, and by other sponsors. Go beyond the interview with Whitney Reynolds and her 52-week guide of inspiration. The book goes deeper into the topics you see on The Whitney Reynolds Show. To get your copy for $12.95 plus shipping and handling, go to whitneyreynolds.com/store and use code PBS. For more information on today's program, visit whitneyreynolds.com or follow us on social media. On Twitter @WhitneyReynolds and on Instagram @Whitney_Reynolds.
Our mommy!
This special online feature is brought to you by O'Connor Law Firm. Together, we can make a difference. And when it comes to your injuries, we take it personally. Visit us at koconnorlaw.com.